What's up, guys? It's JC from KTS Pokebros, and today I'm bringing you something a little bit different. We are doing a deck profile. We here at KTS, we love opening packs, we love collecting cards and whatnot, but we also are very competitive in the TCG. We go to League Cups and League Challenges and all that good stuff. So we want to kind of add that sort of thing to this channel. We do some deck profiles, we do some matches and whatnot. We had a match uploaded a while back where it was me versus Jeff, and I was playing a Bulu Vikavolt deck, which was post-rotation format. And this is that list, though it's not exactly that list because it's gone through a number of changes, which is kind of why it's taking me a while to upload this video. But I've made a lot of changes to that deck since then, and this I feel is like the strongest list I can think of for this deck in the current meta, where we have a lot of Metagross, we have a lot of Volcanion, we have a lot of Gardevoir now, and I feel like this list has definitely had to change because of that, because of the threats that are out there now. But before I go into that, I'm just going to go over a little bit of some stuff that we actually lose because of the rotation, and we mainly lose this versus Seeker here, which just really means that we aren't really able to have a lot of one-of supporters that we would like to have in the list normally, because our Seeker was great for that. It lets you grab supporters that you had in your discard pile, so you could run a lot of one-ups because of that. And some of the one-ups that we lose, actually we lose Hexmaniac period because it goes in the rotation as well. So we won't have Hexmaniac anymore, which is good and bad thing. It was good to use against Metagross and Volcanion, like all their abilities, and shut them down. But it's also really good that's gone because we rerun a ability with strong charge to accelerate our energies. So losing that actually kind of benefits us in the long run. We also lose Team H. I love this card. I think it was one of the best cards in this deck, but unfortunately we lose it. It allowed us, say a Grubbin gets knocked out early on, and we lose a Grubbin early on, and next turn we're able to just play down our teammates and grab two cards, any two cards we want in our deck. We could grab a Rare Candy and a Vikavolt, and then boom, we're all ready to go to set up our Vikavolt. But since we lose it, we're going to have to kind of supplement that with something else like Skyla to still grab things out of the deck, but not as beneficial as Teammates was. Brock's Great is a card still in the format, so we don't actually lose it, but we essentially kind of lose it because we lose our Seeker, and it was a one-of in our decks. It's not really worth playing because of that. But it was great because it allowed us to grab, I think it's six Pokemon and 6 energies and energies, and recycle them back into our deck. Really good in this kind of deck when you strong charge a lot, you discard your energies a lot. But it's not really worth winning anymore because of the Seeker. So we're going to rely mostly on Energy Recycler to do that. And the last supporter that I had in the deck before rotation was Olympia. Pretty nice card. We have a lot of Pokemon that have heavy retreat, so being able to just retreat, switch them out with Olympia and heal 30 was really nice, but it was only really useful at certain times, so it was good to ditch it early on and then use for Seeker when you needed it to switch. But we also have Guzma now, which kind of gives us a switch anyway, so really kind of feels irrelevant to have it in the deck anymore. We already have Guzma, and it's just not really good as a one-of, so we're losing that as well. But anyways, on to the actual list. Pretty standard stuff that you've seen in all those Bulu lists that are already out there. But we have a 3 Bulu, we have the 3 Grubbin, 1 Charjabug, and 3 Vikavolt. I like this lineup. I mean, it hasn't been a problem at all for me. It used to run 2 Charjabug, and I ended up just taking one out in favor of a 4th Rare Candy. You really need to set up Vikavolt as soon as possible with this deck. It's the biggest thing with this deck, is just to set up as soon as possible. So you're going to run high counts of things like Rare Candy and Ultra Ball and whatnot, just to set up as quick as possible. So you really don't need that Charjabug. You're going to go Rare Candy, Vikavolt as soon as possible. But it's still nice if you're trying to get out a second Vikavolt later down in the game. You can always manually evolve through Charjabug. We also run 1 copy of Oranguru. The main reason I put Oranguru in the deck was because of late game ends. Late game ends are always a real pain. This deck has a tendency to kind of just roll sometimes. If you are set up very quickly with this deck. You're just taking knockouts after knockouts. You're doing like 180 damage, 210 damage back to back, and can be kind of overwhelming for your opponent. So your opponent tends to just start ending you down to low hands, and that can really be annoying because a lot of times you'll need like a grass energy to attach to Bulu, and to strong charge to gain 3 energies. So it can be a little frustrating. So I just threw Rangaroo in here just because I needed a way to draw into a couple extra cards just when I'm in a pinch. I would love Artillery in this list, don't get me wrong. I think Artillery is a better option for a lot of lists, but I just have a hard time fitting in this list. I tried removing some stuff and putting a Rangaroo line in there, but it just felt a little weird especially when I'm used to just this being the only thing you're setting up. When you're setting up this and an Artillery, it feels like a little bit more clunky. I wasn't completely behind it, but I might try going back to that and trying an Artillery line in this list because it's definitely better than a Rangaroo. We have a copy of Tapu Koko promo. I think this has become a staple in not only a lot of decks, but especially in Bulu, because it helps with a lot of matchups. You have things like Metagross, you have things like Gardevoir. You can't one-shot with Bulu. So you need some way to just spread some damage out there, and Tapu Koko is definitely something to do that with. And it also has free retreat, which is awesome with cards like Guzma, and you have all these Pokemon that have 2 to 3 retreat costs in your deck. You need a Pokemon that has free retreat to just switch into it and then switch back. It's awesome because of that. Please do consider though that Koko, even though it does spread damage, that's awesome. You're going to use it a lot in matchups like Gardevoir. That there is that Diancie that has that Diamond, I think it's called Diamond Storm attack, that does actually heal 30 from all its Pokemon. So just keep that in mind when you're going in that matchup. But it's really good against things like Metagross. You essentially need this. This is pretty much your only out against Metagross because that is a terrible matchup. And Koko just helps you set up. Metagross is a slower setup, so while they're setting up their Pokemon, you can use Tapu Koko promo to just spread some damage on their Pokemon while they're setting up, and set up knockouts for later when you go in with Bulu. And of course, you gotta have Tapu Lele. For a while, back in that video that I uploaded with me and Jeff playing, I did have 3 Leles in my deck, but I was having a problem with bench space a lot of the time, even though I really liked 3 Leles because it allows you to be more aggressive with the deck. I opted to go with just 2. I don't really feel like I needed a whole lot. You're going to use 1 for Bridget more often than not, and it leaves just 1 left over. And it's hard to get used to once you've gone with 3 Leles for a while, but bench space definitely was an issue. You do want to have 2 Grubbins out with Bridget, just in case when you lose one, you have another one to set up Vikavolt. It's just so important to have 2 Grubbins out as soon as possible. Of course, you're going to have your main attacker, possibly another Bulu, just as backup. And of course, your promo and a Rangaroo have to go on the bench at some point. A lot of matchups, you're going to want to have Koko out there as soon as possible. Sorry, the focus kind of went out there. But I think that was the main reason for just taking out that 3rd Lele, was just the bench space was kind of a little too much when you were being too aggressive with Leles and not having any space to put any other down. But that's the Pokemon. Moving on to the supporters. And the supporters are going to be probably the most interesting thing here, because I have seen a couple of lists lately out there for post-rotation, and they definitely aren't going this route, and I really wish they would. And it's kind of the main reason I wanted to upload this video. I do not run 4 for Sycamore and N. I think it's way better to run less counts of those. And I also have a bit of a meta call here, I guess you can say, with the Kukuis. So let me explain this before I move on to the other supporters. So the main reason we don't have a high count of Sycamore and Ns, like you normally see in most decks, is because while testing this deck, I have realized that a lot of times you just don't really need to draw supporters. You don't really need to rely on those draw supporters as much as other decks, because you're very often just thinning out your deck very early on with strong charge, right? So you're naturally just drawing into the cards you want later in the game more often. And also, you're mostly focused on just setting up early on. So I found that having higher count of Skyla just works a lot better. You just use Skyla to get the specific cards you need. Often you just need a rare candy. Often you might just need, like, if you already have the rare candy in your hand, you'll have the Ultra Ball to get with Skyla. So believe me when I say it is not necessary to have high counts of these guys. Just trust me on that. I know it's something that a lot of people do in most decks. I can't preach it enough. You don't need a high count of Sycamore, and especially early on, you don't want to have Sycamore in your hand, really, because you're going to have a lot of resources that you want to use and you don't want to have to just ditch. So I'd much rather have a higher count, and if anything, but just in testing, I felt that just 4/4 is just not necessary in this deck at all. And the thing here with Kukui is this is really just here because it allows us to one-shot Gardevoir, which is really big right now. And the only reason I really stuck this in here is because right now Gardevoir is like 70% of what I play against right now. It's like that's all there is Gardevoir out there right now. It's a really popular deck. And I think as soon as that stops being a thing, you know, maybe when it calms down a bit and we see other archetypes being out there, I'd probably drop these in favor of doing something like this, like maybe having 3 copies of Sycamore and 3 copies of N, you know, a more traditional route. I think that's fine too, you could do that. But I decided to throw in the 2 Kukui because 1 just wasn't enough, because it does allow you to one-shot Gardevoir for a 230. You know, of course with the choice band, you would do 230. So I like it. You really don't have to draw on this deck. Like I said, you're naturally just thinning out your deck, and really it's just the first couple turns that you're wanting specific cards. So rather than trying to Sycamore for them, it's much better to Skyla for them because we have a really high count of those items that we need. We need, you know, rare candies and Ultra Balls to set up our even Heavy Ball to set up our Vikavolts. And because we have such a high count of them, we often will have at least one of those in our hand. So all we need to do is Skyla for the other pieces that we need to get set up. So I'd much rather have Skyla in my opening hand, and that's actually why I run 3 Skyla. And even later in the game, it's just so beneficial to have Skyla just to grab that like energy recycler you have in your deck when you need to have more energies in your deck for strong charge. So just believe me on this, guys. 3 Skyla and then drop the counts on the Sycamore and Ends. You don't need a high count of those. We also have 3 copies of Guzma. This is pretty standard in most decks. It just allows you to be aggressive and take out those knockouts. And our last supporter here is a Bridget. I would love to have a second Bridget in here. There's a couple cards I'll probably talk about later that you can remove from this list, or you know, if you are going to remove them in the list, my first choice would probably be adding a second Bridget because it's just so crucial to have that start where you can get your Grubbins out right away and set up as fast as possible. This deck benefits so much from setting up very fast, and having a second Bridget can help with that because there's going to be times where it just gets prized. So that's the list. That's all the supporters you really need. Really can't do too many one of supporters because of Seeker going out of rotation. Items here are pretty big thick counts here. They just allow us to set up as soon as possible. Pretty standard stuff. 4 copies of Ultra Ball. And I have 2 copies of Heavy Ball as well, because just so many targets with Heavy Ball. It's so useful. You don't have to discard anything. And like I said, you have a lot of resources that you don't want to get rid of, especially early on. So drawing into that Heavy Ball, or just grabbing a Heavy Ball with Skyla early on is just awesome. You don't have to ditch anything. Really, you're going to use Ultra Ball for things to get like Lele, to get Bridget early on. Whereas Heavy Ball is going to be more to get your main attacker, Bulu, and your Vikavolt. We also have 4 copies of Rare Candy. Like I mentioned earlier, I had 3 before, then I took out a charter book to have 4, just so you have a higher chance of drawing into that. And then we also have 2 copies of Energy Recycler. Hopefully you guys can see that. There you go. 2 copies of Energy Recycler. You're often going to play at least 1 within a match, so just having 2 is really good in case one gets prized or whatnot. You're going to have to recycle at some point, especially in some matchups now that we're having to deal with like Metagross and Gardevoir, where the matches are much more longer because we are not able to just one-shot. So we're often having to discard energies, so you're going to have to get them energies back some way, and that's just our main way of doing that. We also have a split here of a bunch of tools. And I've seen some lists have 2-1. They'll have like 2 choice band and 1 fighting for your belt, or 2 fighting for your belt and 1 choice band. I think if you're gonna do that, that's an opportunity where you can take a card out and put a second Bridget in. But I like this nice split because of just how many matchups we're having to deal with. And there's some matchups where you need choice band to get those numbers to knock things out in one hit. And you need some matchups like Metagross, where this is pretty much the only way you're going to survive in that matchup. And you're not going to be able to one-shot him anyways with a choice band, so you might as well use a Fighting Fury belt. So this can be changed in any way you want. This is really one of those things that if you're going to a tournament, you want to make the call that, I think I'm going to run into more Gardevoir than anything, then you might change these up, the counts on these a little bit. Or if, say, you really don't feel like you're going to run into things like Metagross or anything, then you can drop this and make it maybe like a choice band instead. Really your call, just depends on what you think you're going to face. And 2 copies of Floatstone. A lot of our Pokemon have high retreat cost, so we need these Floatstones just so that Vikavolt can stand it out in the active, or a Grubbin at the very start of the match. You might have to start off with a Grubbin. Well, you can use a Floatstone to just get it out of there. And of course we have Guzma now, so having something to retreat to with a Floatstone on it just helps a lot. You can switch back to our main attacker that way. We have 2 copies of Field Blower. I think it's really important to have more than 1 Field Blower in this deck because of things like Garbodor, Garbotoxin. That's going to shut us down, our abilities, and so we need a way to counter that. So I can even see the argument of maybe 3 Field Blowers, but so far, because it hasn't been a matchup that's around too much, I think Garbodor is kind of dropping off a bit. I have it at 2 counts, but I can see someone bumping it up to 3. Like I said, this list is pretty tight though, so it's really hard to remove anything from this list. And I have a Rescue Stretcher. I used to run it without a Rescue Stretcher for quite a while, but I ultimately decided to throw it in there. There's just a lot of times where I wanted to get things back. Maybe a Lele for like a late game, like Guzma or something. Or maybe just like a piece of my Vikavolt line that I need to grab really quick. Or maybe my main attacker, like Bulu. Maybe one's prized and one got knocked out, and all I have is 1 left. I want a way to recycle 1. Rescue Stretcher is just amazing for that. So I opted to have just 1 Rescue Stretcher in the deck. But that's all the items. I know it's a lot. Like I said, you can probably drop one of those tools for me, like a Bridget. If you're really worried about something like Gyrodor, Trash Launch, something like that. But I feel like a lot of those items are justified because they let you set up very quickly. And lastly, we have our energies. And this should be 7 grass energies and 5 lightning energies. Pretty standard for a Bulu deck to have. Most lists run this. Of course, you want more grass than lightning just for your strong charges, and your Bulu has a attack cost of 2 grass and a colorless. Plus, you want to draw into grass more often so you can attach for turn, early on if you only have 1 Vikavolt out, and then strong charge the other 2 grass and lightning onto it. But yeah, that is the list. I have one last card here I want to make as kind of an honorable mention. It is Tapu Koko. I had this in the list a long time ago, early on when I first had built the deck, because I just saw this energy with it. It was awesome. That Tapu Thunder GX attack is just awesome. It's a really sneaky attack you can hit your opponent with. You have a Gardevoir, a bunch of energies on it. You can bring this guy in and just often get a 1-hit KO on it. It's just, I fail over time. It wasn't always benefiting me, and honestly, if I recall it correctly, the reason I ended up taking it out was for when the pin collection or whatever came out with this promo, I ended up swapping it out for this guy just because I liked the free retreat and I liked the potential to just rack up some damage with Flying Flip and those matchups like Metagross. So that's why I took him out in favor of this guy, but I don't want to go without saying like the potential of this guy. It's a really good card. If I had room in the list, I'd probably throw it in there, but just want to kind of mention it because it just works well because with strong charge, lightning, 2 lightnings and a colorless, it works just fine in this list. But anyways, guys, hope you guys enjoyed this. Please, feel free to let me know any suggestions, any advice on just like not only on the list itself, but just on these kind of videos. It's the first time I do one of these videos. And I just, if there's something I could do better, please let me know. Don't hesitate to drop some comments down and suggest some stuff. And yeah, let me know how I did and what do you think of this list. Any suggestions of just a list if you want to suggest some cards I can drop for some other stuff. I would love to have a second Bridget in here. I think it's definitely something I considered. And even a second one of these guys. I think because of that Metagross matchup is such a pain, I think a second Coco promo might benefit this list. So let me know what you guys think. Again, thanks for watching, guys, and I will see you later. Peace.